Hey everybody, this is Stefan Gonick. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Attracting Your Soulmate using the power of EFT. My name is Stefan Gonick. I'm an expert EFT practitioner, trainer, and founder of the Soulmate Attraction Academy from single-to-soulmate.me. So on this call, I'm going to be answering people's questions about any aspect of attracting your soulmate. Like what are the blocks that you may have, practical aspects, even things that happen after you found your soulmate and you're in a relationship. So whatever questions you have on this topic, anything to do with soulmate stuff, you're very welcome to ask, and I will do my best to answer them. Now, I have some people who sent me questions in advance, and I'm also going to be answering people's questions live. I find that people tend to need a little warm up before they're ready to post their questions. So I'm going to start with at least one of the questions that were emailed to me in advance, but feel free to go ahead in the chat system to type in your question. And as soon as I finish answering the one that I'm currently answering, I'll then switch to yours and I'll kind of go back and forth. So let's see. The first question that I got sent in advance was from Nancy. And she wrote, I was a stay-at-home mom for many years, not working enough to earn my own Social Security. After a 35-year marriage, I now receive spousal support, Social Security, and a pension through my ex-husband. I would like to attract a partner and eventually be married again, but to do so would mean giving up most of my money. I feel it would be difficult to find somebody with nothing to offer monetarily. How do I get past this? So it's understandable that after 35 years of marriage, and you're starting new again, that this is a scary situation, right? You probably feel like it's been decades since I've been in the dating world, and a lot of people have a lot of apprehension about dating. And then one of the things that happens for people is they start getting scared about elements like this, right? Like I'm scared that because I don't have much to contribute financially, no man is going to want me. Or, I'm not, makes me, not attractive as a potential partner. Okay. So one of the things I'll just kind of bring to your attention is that there are many women that are in a similar situation to you, or have been in the past, a similar situation where they were a stay-at-home mom and they were married for a very long time and they, didn't work out. They got divorced, and then they have to enter the dating world. And they're also not in a position to contribute much financially for that very obvious practical reason. And yet a lot of them find a great partner and get married again, and it's not a problem. So, culturally, there's a lot of men who are not that worried about whether or not the woman contributes financially. There are certainly some men who would like the woman to contribute financially. So I'm not trying to make a blanket statement, but in terms of, making yourself, not attractive in general because of your situation, that's really not the case. Now, one of the ways you can actually, and let me take this even a step deeper potentially. So like I said, there's a lot of fear about re-entering the dating world after a long marriage. But there's also something that can happen before you ever get married or can happen after a divorce. And that is if you're feeling self-doubt, sort of deep inside, like feeling unworthy or not good enough or something like that, which is a pretty common thing. It's probably the single biggest block that we have around being with our soulmate or our ideal partner. Those feelings of not being good enough or not being worthy, people can either just experience it directly like that, or they might experience it indirectly where they kind of point to something more concrete than that. Like, well, I don't have, not able to contribute financially, so that makes me unacceptable. Or maybe, I weigh too much, that makes me unacceptable. Or maybe this, maybe that. When really what's going on is deep down, there's this feeling of not being good enough, period. And not for a reason that we can name, even though our minds will try and find these explanations. Well, it's because of this or this or this. But it's really a much deeper thing. And then our mind does just try and, find something concrete to point at and go, see, that's why I'm not good enough. Or that's why I'm not worthy. So I don't know if that's the case for you, but I just wanted to bring up that possibility because it's a really common one. But if you want to tap on, the thing that you're having, the issue that you're having where you don't feel like you can contribute financially, I would do so. in these Ask Me Anything calls, I don't do tapping because it would take too long, to try and lead a tapping thing for each question. So what I'm really trying to do is tell you how to tap on things. So, as we go through this call, that's what I'm going to be doing. So the way I would tap on this, if you want to get some relief from this limiting belief, is, I don't have much to contribute financially, and that makes me, unacceptable or a bad partner or something like that. So I would just tap on a couple things. I would tap on the phrase as you put it, right? Even though, because I don't have much to contribute financially, I'm not in a, say, how did you word that? It's difficult to find somebody with nothing to offer monetarily. So you can just use your own words. So even though I'm afraid it'd be difficult to find somebody with nothing when I have nothing to offer monetarily, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself anyway. Any kind of self-doubt issues, I like to put anyway at the end. And you see that 3 times while tapping the crotch tap point. And then you do a number of rounds on that. But then I would do like 2 rounds on that. Then I would alternate rounds where it's a negative round and then a positive round. The positive round is there's many women who've been in the exact same situation as me, and they found a wonderful partner. Okay. So this is just help bring in the positive. Now, we don't want to just switch to the positive statements. Even though they feel good, we want to keep clearing out the negative belief, right? So I would do 2 rounds on the negative belief to start with, and then start alternating. Each round, a round is, 1 pass through all the points. So 1 round on the negative belief, 1 round on the positive alternative, right? Many women in the same situation have found a great partner. And just keep alternating rounds until the negative, and at the very beginning, rate how true the negative belief feels in your gut, 0 to 10, right? 10 meaning absolutely true, 0 meaning not true at all. So let's say it starts for you at an 8. So you do a couple of rounds, then you start alternating. And after about 10 rounds of that, check back in again. What is it now? Maybe it's, 4. And just keep going until that negative belief goes down to 0, or at least to a 2 or less. If anything's a 2 or less, it's not usually really bothering us. So anyway, that's the answer to my question. I hope you found it helpful. Alrighty. So let's see if anybody online has a question for me yet. So I'm going to try. Just looking to see. By the way, you guys, there's a delay between. Oops, sorry. There's a delay between what I say and when you hear me, and then when you respond. So I might say, waiting for questions, and you're like madly typing a question, and saying, why doesn't he see it? Because unfortunately, there's this built-in delay. So you just have to account for that. It's like a 10-second delay. So let me just see if we have any chats. And nope. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question. Okay, so this person wrote, this is Doreen, and she said, once you begin a relationship, are there further tapping scripts on how to successfully develop and maintain that relationship? This is an awesome question, because like when I work with people, I try and address both of those during the healing process. Because if you think about it, if you focus purely on attracting your soulmate, but you have unhealthy relating behaviors, just think of how tragic it would be if you met your soulmate, you get together, get married even, and then these unhealthy patterns you have and issues start to ruin an otherwise really good relationship, which can happen. I actually helped a client find someone really wonderful, but he got triggered. Well, they both got triggered because it's a normal thing to happen in a relationship. But in her case, when she got triggered, she cleared the trigger. We just worked together, cleared the trigger, and it was gone. He got triggered and he didn't do anything with it. And he just stayed in this triggered state. And it was tragic. Otherwise it was such a good relationship. So we can't control what our partner might or might not do, but we can certainly control what we do. So yes, that's a critically important, in fact, thing to do. So the way you want to do this is, when you think about it, when we're in a relationship, any unhealed triggers from childhood will show up in that relationship. And it has nothing to do with your partner, right? It's our childhood triggers. But as long as they're there, they will get triggered by our partner, no matter how incredibly wonderful our partner is, because it's our own wound, it's our own issue. It will periodically get triggered and cause great distress. And when we get triggered, not only will we feel all those painful feelings from childhood, we will react in a unhealthy way that we did in childhood as well, and it will make the situation worse, right? So the person will inadvertently do something that triggers our hot button, and then we will overreact in a way that will start a fight, right? That will start some big issue between us that really has nothing to do with our partner. So how do you address this? So like I said, when I'm working with somebody one-on-one, I actually look for those during the healing process, and I try to address them at the same time we're clearing blocks for that very reason, right? But if you're kind of doing this on your own, what you want to do is think about the experiences you've had in your current relationship and all your past relationships, and notice the repeating triggers, right? So there's going to be something that you noticed that's upsetting in every relationship. Now, sometimes that could be because we pick the same kind of person over and over again, but lots of times it's also because of these childhood triggers. So I'll give an example for myself. One of my big childhood triggers was feeling misjudged and misunderstood, right? So in every relationship I was in, if my partner did something where it felt like she wasn't, I was getting misjudged and misunderstood, I would have this big reaction to it and get super defensive and try and explain myself and prove why they were misjudging me and misunderstanding me, stuff like that. And it would create a lot of extra strife in the relationship. Had nothing to do with my partner. I mean, even if my partner actually is misunderstanding me in that moment and misjudging me in that moment, that's not true most of the time. Most of the time, my partner understands me fine and doesn't misjudge me. So, it can happen occasionally that you can get misjudged and misunderstood. That's just part of life. But for me, but normally it's not that big a deal. Assuming your partner generally does understand you and doesn't misjudge you, having it happen every once in a while is not that big a deal. But because of an unhealed wound from my own childhood, I would have this overly big reaction. I was overly sensitive to anything that felt like I was being misjudged or misunderstood, and I'd have this overly big reaction to it, and it would cause a lot of problems in my relationship. So we all have these. So what you want to do is start by, like I say, thinking about all your past relationships and notice whether or not, or notice things that repeated, right? So it's like, I seem to have the same kind of upset over and over again in my relationships. So if you notice that, then that's probably a trigger from childhood that you're really going to want to clear, so you don't have to keep repeating that over and over and over again. And so assuming you've identified one, I mean, we typically have several of these, right? It's not just one. We could easily have half a dozen of these, even more sometimes. Could have 10 of them. It depends on the person. So what you want to do, though, is write them all down. See if you can rate how intense the trigger is. They're all probably going to be fairly intense if you've noticed that they keep repeating in every relationship. And then think about what happened in childhood that created that trigger, right? So I'll give you an example. I had a girlfriend a long time ago who had a father who was a raging father. He was very quick to go into a rage. And so she had this trigger around him raging. Understandable, right? And now I'm not a raging person, and I'm very slow to get angry and almost never ever yell and all that kind of stuff, right? But with her, all I had to do is if my voice went up, if I was just a little frustrated or a little irritated and my voice went up a notch, just that little bit, right? She would go, all I can hear is that you're angry at me. I can't hear a word you're saying. Right? It's like, good. So the way you handle that, now she identified the source. So you want to figure out what's the source of the trigger. So what you would do is heal some representative memories, in her case, of her father raging at her, right? And when I do, I do this kind of healing with a client, or when people are doing it on their own, the way I recommend to do it, it's what I call first and worst. right? So first is, what's the first time you remember this painful experience happening? Now, it doesn't actually have to be the very first time in your whole life, but what's the earliest you do remember? That's all. So try and start with whichever one was the earliest one you remember and heal that memory using EFT. If you're not sure how to heal a memory in EFT, I have a video called Healing Painful Memories with EFT or something like that. I forgot the exact title. But you just watch that video. They'll teach you how to heal a painful memory. So heal that painful memory. And then think of a couple of the worst examples when you were still living at home, right? So in her case, her father would rage at her. What was the youngest you remember him doing it? And she would heal that. And then what are some of the biggest, worst ones? Which I have no idea because we didn't stay together, but and then you want to heal those. Now, if you do a really thorough, effective healings, it typically takes about healing 3 memories to clear that trigger and not get triggered by it anymore. Okay. Now, that's assuming that you really thoroughly heal that memory. If you're, sort of new to EFT, not that experienced with it, not that skilled at it, you might have to, heal a few more memories than that. And with a super skilled practitioner, it could take only 1 or 2 memories. So it just depends. But as long as you heal enough, example memories of whatever your parent did that created that trigger will go away forever. It'll be done. And so that source of pain and turmoil and strife in your relationship will be gone, right? Which is awesome when you think about it. I mean, I'll never forget my own parents when I was growing up. They had these certain triggers that happened like over and over and over again. And they had my mother and my stepfather. They actually had an overall very good marriage, but they had these same triggers that kept happening. And I always felt so bad for them. Of course, when I was living at home, I had no idea what to do about it. I just noticed. But you can clear these out and your relationship will be so much better. Now, on top of that, you can learn good communication techniques, but learning good communication techniques is helpful, but it's not addressing what I was talking about, these unhealed childhood triggers that create so much pain and strife in your relationship. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. And let's see if anybody has any live questions for me. Okay, still not seeing any. So like I said, feel free to type in your questions. I do have, here we go. Great. Okay, so here's the first question. Live question, I should say. How do we know that the partner is, quote, the right one if we really know the person after a year or more? The beginnings are always great, but then you realize what the person is really like. Okay, so this is a big question. It depends where you are in your healing journey. So, one of the concepts that I work with, in fact, let me just go ahead and name the 3 blocks that I believe that apply to, most people that are preventing them from finding their soulmate or their ideal partner or a great partner, however you want to put it. And that is the following 3 blocks. The first one is being powerfully, subconsciously attracted to the wrong people, right? So lots of us notice that we keep, no matter, in spite of our best efforts, we keep getting together with the same kind of partner over and over again. And if you look at their key negative traits of these partners, and you think about the key negative traits of your parents, you'll notice that they match, right? So we tend to become subconsciously, powerfully attracted to people with the worst negative traits of our parents, which is a bummer, right? We're also attracted to the positive traits of our parents, but that's not a problem because they're positive traits, so that's fine. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second block are is having fears and negative beliefs or limiting beliefs that interfere with or even prevent us from being with our ideal partner or our soulmate. And then the third one is not quite a block per se, but it's understanding the right way to use the law of attraction so that it helps you rather than hurts you. Helps you in the sense that it helps you speed up finding your partner. But there's ways to do it that unfortunately make it less likely to find your partner. So that's the third area that needs to be addressed, shall we say. So this question really gets to the question of, have we cleared out our negative attraction pattern or not? Because when we have a negative attraction pattern, lots of times the person, so it's this negative attraction pattern is a subconscious attraction. It's not a conscious attraction. And we are able to subconsciously pick up on subtle cues that the person has these negative traits, even though it may not be obvious when you first meet them. Okay, this is key to the whole thing, is we will pick up on subtle cues from all the way across the room. So lots of times, even people, lots of times, if they had a lot of bad experiences, will be like looking out for red flags. And then they'll be surprised, like they'll meet somebody, go, well, this person didn't seem to be anything like my past negative partners when we first got together. But, as this person says, a year later, I discovered that, wow, they do have those same negative traits, and it's like, oh, here I am again. So this is the thing. There's these subtle cues, because remember, when you first meet somebody, everybody's on their best behavior. So they're not going to show you their negative traits right off the bat. So, and yet we are unerringly able to, pick up on those subtle cues and be attracted to those same kinds of people. So the big question is, have you broken free from that negative attraction pattern or not? If you have not, things tend to be kind of sucky, right? We tend to keep getting together with the same kind of person over and over again. So we say, how do you know if they're the one, or, the right person, or a great partner or whatever? And, because after a year into it, you discover, they're not. It really comes down to whether or not this has been healed. Now, I actually do have a video on this very topic. How do you tell if this is the one or just another one of these negative attraction patterns? I did it for people who are working on their negative attraction pattern, and they're trying to decide whether or not they're still in the pattern or they've broken out of it. But if you haven't done this kind of healing yet, you're probably in it, right? I mean, it doesn't mean for sure that the person you're with fits your pattern. It's highly likely, but it's not absolutely for sure that they do. So let's see. How can you tell early on? So it's hard to in the beginning, because like I say, it's it's very exciting. It seems great. The person's on their best behavior. They're not showing you those negative traits, overtly anyway. So lots of times that is people's experiences, is that they will have a great first 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever it is. And then, oh no, they discover this is yet another one of those negative partners. So I know I'm painting a kind of a discouraging picture. The problem is that this is very common. Most people suffer from this, right? And our marriage statistics kind of confirm it when you think about it. Half of all marriages in the United States, anyway, I don't know the statistics in other countries, but United States, half of all marriages end in divorce. And of the half that stay together, half of them are not happy. They're staying together for other reasons. So only 25% of marriages are actually happy. So that means 75% are not. And the big question is, why are they not? And I would claim it's usually this. You go to couples counselors, and the first thing they try and do is, help you with your communication stuff. But that's not addressing this kind of thing where you're powerfully attracted to somebody with the worst traits of your parents, and then reliving all the pain of your childhood. No communication skills is going to address that. So it's something that needs to be cleared. And there's ways to do that. Actually, I have a free mini course called The 3 Secrets to Attracting Amazing Love. And it talks about these 3 blocks I was just referring to. It goes into more depth than I have time to in this Ask Me Anything call. But it includes a psychological description of how these negative attraction patterns get created, and exactly what it takes using EFT to completely break free from it. The cool thing is working one-on-one anyway, it only takes healing about 3 representative memories of the parent's negative trait, but you have to do it the right way. The regular way of healing a memory with EFT doesn't do it, because it doesn't fully address the situation. But if you get the free mini course, it gives you all the details of how to do that. All right. Now, if you have a follow-up question, the person who A1B292, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to go ahead and type that in, and we'll continue from here. Let's see. So anybody who on live who has a question, feel free to type it in. And in the meantime, I am going to go to another one of the sent in questions. And sorry, it's going to take me a second because I think I accidentally closed that window. There we go. Okay, could you help with not feeling good enough to meet my soulmate? Okay, so remember I said that was the most common block. So remember, first block, being powerfully attracted to the wrong people. Second block is the fears and limiting beliefs that can interfere with being with our ideal partner. And the number one most common limiting belief is feeling like I'm not good enough, not worthy, different ways of wording it. The way I worded it when I was first kind of realized that I had blocks was no woman that I was super interested in could possibly be interested in me, which is pretty self-defeating belief. And the way that this kind of thing affects us during dating can be profound. It depends on how intense this negative belief is. So for instance, when it was super powerful, this is what would happen when I would go to some group event. So I'm a single guy, right? Going to a group event. I would kind of scan the room, and there's always in some group, group thing, there's always at least one woman that really stood out as super interesting and appealing. And I don't mean that she was just like the prettiest woman in the group. If I just kind of watched her for a while and saw her interacting with people, there's something about her energy and her spirit and all the stuff that, like, wow, she seems really interesting, right? And then I would continue to scan the room, and I see this other woman. It's like, oh, she seems nice. Which one would I go talk to? The one that was super fascinating, or the one that seemed nice? Well, I didn't feel good enough to talk to the one that seemed super fascinating because I had this belief that any woman I was super interested in couldn't possibly be interested in me. So it's like I felt defeated in advance. So I just felt, too intimidated to go there. So then I would talk to the other woman, though, who seemed nice. And with her, I was relaxed because the stakes didn't feel very high, right? Because I wasn't that interested to begin with. So I was relaxed. I was confident. I was comfortable being myself. And lots of times that woman would then get interested in me. And then I'd find myself in this position of like, well, I'm not really, I'm not that interested, right? And we might even get involved because it felt good to feel the interest since I didn't feel good enough for the kind of woman I really wanted to be with. So it did feel good to get this interest. And sometimes that'd even lead to me getting involved, but I was never that excited about the person to begin with. So that was very self-defeating. As I first started working on that, I finally got over the complete block. So where I was just avoid talking to her altogether, but I did try and talk to her, but the block was still there enough that I would be really anxious and tense and kind of fumbling over myself and not comfortable just being, not relaxed and comfortable being myself. I would be very awkward and stuff. So in the beginning, I was proud of myself that I finally went to talk to a woman that I found really interesting. But it never went anywhere because I was too awkward. I had to keep working on this gradually over time because I didn't have somebody like me to actually help get through this kind of stuff quickly. But I did gradually work through it until finally I got to a point where I didn't feel intimidated by anybody, and I didn't feel that feeling anymore of, that I wasn't good enough or not worthy, stuff like that. So I became a lot more comfortable and could talk to women that I found really, really interesting. So, finally. So if you have that issue, how do you get over that? So that one is one of the most challenging ones. The most common one, probably. Well, in my experience, it is the most common one, at least of the negative beliefs. There's common fears as well. But it's also one of the most challenging ones because the source of that is a big deal. So when you think about it, growing up, what would cause us to feel not good enough for our ideal partner? Well, in general, there's three kinds of experiences that we can have growing up that would create that feeling of not being good enough inside of ourselves. The first one is having one or both parents not be very loving, not emotionally available. See, we learn who we are when we're very little, like 2 or 3 years old, and based on how both of our parents treat us. So if we get lots of love and attention from both of our parents, our simple little 3-year-old brain goes, I must be worthy of love and attention, or I must deserve love and attention. I must be a good kid. I must be lovable, right? So that's just simple mind, right? If we don't get enough love and attention from one or both parents, then sadly our simple little brain goes, I must not deserve love and attention. There must be something wrong with me. I must not be lovable, right? Little kids take everything personally. It never occurs to them that the problem could be with the parent, right? So if you have that in your background, that's a big deal, and that needs to be healed. That was hard to do on our own, though. So that's one of the 3 kinds of experiences that can cause that not feeling good enough feeling. The second one is to have a really angry parent who yells at us. So when we do something they don't like, rather than just simply admonish us for what we did, they will yell at us and put us down as a person, right? They'll go, what's the matter with you? Can't you do anything right? Right? So they're yelling at us. When we're being yelled at with a lot of anger, the basic unspoken message behind that angry yelling is, you're not okay with me. Okay? Regardless of what the topic is, regardless of what the parent is yelling at us about, if we're getting yelled at loudly with a lot of anger, the message is, you're not okay with me. And if that happens a lot, then we start feeling not okay, right? So with that one, that was a little more straightforward. Doing regular ways of healing memories. Remember, we use first and worst to heal those kind of experiences. There's a more powerful way to heal them than just regular EFT method that works even better. But even if you just use a regular EFT method, it'll help a lot. Now, the third kind of thing that can create, let's see, I have another question coming in, but for some reason, oh, the person just said hi. Okay. Anyway, the third kind of experience that can create that feeling of not being good enough, or there's something wrong with me, or I'm not worthy, any of those kind of variations, right, is if we have a very judgmental and critical parent, and which is just part of their personality, right? Some people, some human beings are just very judgmental and critical. That's just who they are. And if they are also a parent, so they will do that with everybody. They'll do that with people they don't know. They might just think in their head, well, look at that person. But if they have a child, they will do it with their child. And so when we're being judged and criticized, the parent is very overtly saying, this party is not okay with me. That party is not okay with me. That party is not okay with me. And it starts to accumulate over time, right? Because if they're critical and judgmental, they'll tend to do that many, many times over the course of our childhood. And we'll start feeling not very okay, right? So those 3 different kinds of experiences can sort of accumulate to the final outcome of just deep down, I don't feel good enough for my soulmate. I don't feel worthy of my soulmate. It feels like there's something wrong with me. I feel flawed. I feel defective. These are all just different ways of expressing the same thing. Just everybody has their own wording. So with the critical judgmental one, again, first and worst, do some example memories of that, and that'll help a lot. Like I said, the lack of love and attention is the hardest one to do on your own. So I'm not quite sure how to recommend it. I mean, you can certainly try and do that, but there's the problem with that one is it's not that they're doing something painful to us, is that it's what they're not doing, right? There's something missing. And that's harder for people to tap on by themselves, like to tap on the lack of love and attention, right? Rather than being yelled at, that's easy to tap on. Getting criticized, that's easy to tap on. So anyways, usually you have to do the kind of thing with a practitioner. Let's see. Anybody else have any? So anyway, that's my answer to that question. If you heal that stuff, you'll feel dramatically better. There are other stuff you can do as well. Just to add one last thing is, so what the method I've been recommending so far is healing the emotional wounds that hurt our self-esteem, that made us feel bad about ourselves, right? That's what I've been talking about. And by healing those experiences, we will naturally feel better about ourselves. Now, there's another way to do it too, which is to do processes that help us build up our self-love, our self-appreciation, our good feelings about ourselves. That approach, if you don't heal the negative experience from childhood, helps a bit, but doesn't tend to be very powerful. But if you put the two together, that's awesome, right? Where you heal the negative experiences and you use processes to build up your self-love and self-esteem and self-appreciation. So I actually happen to have a small product like that called Self-Love to Soulmate are just a set of processes to help you do that. But I wouldn't recommend, I mean, you can get it by yourself. It's actually pretty cheap, and do it. But I would recommend, more importantly, to heal the wounds first and then do the other one, right? Because as long as the wounds are there and we all have all this self-doubt and not feeling good enough, trying to build ourselves up positively, it's hard to sink in, right? Because you have all these inner voices that are objecting and resisting. So, but if you can combine the two, that's awesome. Now, for those who do want to work on their own to heal these childhood things, including, by the way, the lack of love and attention, this emotionally distant parenting, I do have a product for that. And it's called the Single to Soulmate Breakthrough Program. And it does help with, it's a recorded program you tap along with at home that does help you heal all those kinds of things. So when I said with practitioner, what I really mean is with the guidance of a practitioner. So in that program, you're being guided through it, right? The other options work one-on-one, which I'm available for, of course. But you need that, not getting enough love and attention. You need guidance for that. So that's in my other program. All right. Any more live questions? So not yet. All right. So I'll do another one of my call-in or emailed in questions. Okay. So this person said, from what I could acknowledge, I suffer both from a fear of intimacy as well as a fear of abandonment. What do I do? Yeah. So this would be the 3 blocks: attracted to the wrong people, fears and negative beliefs around being with our ideal partner. So those two are in that second block. Fear of intimacy. Fear of intimacy means that basically we had painful experiences growing up that make us scared of intimacy now, scared of being close, right? Because basically what we're really afraid of is repeating the painful experiences we had growing up, right? That's what makes us scared. So we're gun shy, right? We had these painful experiences growing up that makes intimacy today feel dangerous. And as long as that's true, there'll be, it can greatly affect our love life in a couple different ways. One is it can make us shy away from people that seem really great, because the better they seem to be, the bigger the chance for true intimacy to happen, which makes them scarier, right? So we'll go, I'm not going to go this way. Right, there they are. I can't go there. I'm going to go here. The other thing you can do is, even if we're not so blocked that we can't get involved with somebody, it'll tend to cause us to keep our guard up and to maintain a certain amount of distance in the relationship. So we will limit our intimacy because we're scared of intimacy. Does that make sense, right? I'll get to the abandonment one next. So they're 2 separate things. So what do you do when you have fears around intimacy? The first step is to try and get a lot more specific. Because lots of times people say, well, I have a fear of intimacy. But there is no such thing as a fear of intimacy as a global thing, right? What it really is that we are afraid of certain kinds of things around intimacy. And we may actually have more than one thing we're afraid of around being close and intimate. So what you want to do is, think about being with somebody who's amazing, who's trying to be really intimate with you. And I don't mean sexual, I mean emotionally intimate. And notice what fears come up, right? And that will help you identify your specific fears around intimacy. Because if you just tap on it, even though I'm afraid of intimacy, nothing's going to happen. So you want to get very specific, and you may end up with a list. You might, like I say, it could be a few things, 10 things, whatever it is. Rate them all, scale 0 to 10. And then there's 2 ways to try and clear them. There's a quick and simple way, which may or may not work. And there's the deep way, which will always work if you do it effectively. So the simple way is just to use the fear itself as your tapping phrase. So remember, you rated them all on a scale of 0 to 10. So let's say your fear of intimacy would be, trying to think of a quick example. Afraid. Okay, I'm afraid of being controlled. Maybe that's one of my fears around intimacy, that my partner will be very controlling and can control everything I do. Okay, so you could just, have that's your fear. I'm afraid of being controlled. 0 to 10, it's an 8. And you say, even though I'm afraid of being controlled by my partner, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself. And you say that 3 times. And then you just tap on that on all your points. Afraid of being controlled, afraid of being controlled, afraid of being controlled, afraid of being controlled, by my partner. And just, a few rounds, and keep checking in after every 2 or 3 rounds and see if the number is coming down. And then one of 3 things will happen. Either the number will keep coming down, 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 down until you get to 0. And then, yay, you've cleared out that fear. You're done. The other thing that can happen is it'll come down part way and stop. And the third thing is that tapping like that, it won't come down at all or barely. So if it's the second or third option, then you have to go to the root of it, right? So fear of being controlled by my partner, where did this fear come from? Now you may say, well, it came from the fact that I've been controlled by many partners in my life, right? But it probably didn't start with your romantic relationships. It probably started in childhood. Maybe you had a very controlling parent. And if you did, that's where you want to do the healing. And then we're back to first and worst, right? The first time you remember being controlled, sort of painfully controlled, right? I mean, parents have to control us to some degree, right? But this is typically an overly controlling parent, a very dominating, controlling parent. So, the youngest one you can remember, and then some of the worst examples of it. And just keep healing those memories and periodically check back on your fear. Like after every memory you heal, check back in on the fear. And you'll notice that the fear, the level will keep coming down until you get to ideally a 0, but at least to a 2 or less, because it won't be affecting you anymore. So that's how you do it. So you're going to give a list of fears, heal the source. Well, try and just tap on it directly with the phrase, and then otherwise heal the root cause of it from childhood. Right? All right. So the other one is a fear of abandonment. So fear of abandonment. Again, this is one of the fears that is in the second block of that interferes with us being with our soulmate. And the fear of abandonment is kind of actually a similar sort of effects from the fear of intimacy. Because what happens if we're afraid of abandonment, we will tend to either, again, stay away from a super amazing seeming partner, because if we get abandoned by somebody who's amazing, it'll be just so much more painful, right? So it'll either stop us from being with our ideal partner, or it will cause us to have one foot out the door, right? I'm so afraid of being abandoned that I'm kind of halfway leaving, right? Like if I start to, experience something that seems like we're heading towards abandonment, which it may not at all, right? We may be overly sensitive and then overreact, and we may leave early. It's like, well, if my partner's going to abandon me, then I'm out of here. I'm going to leave now, right? Before my partner gets a chance to do it. It could also cause us to get clingy. And ironically, that clinginess can cause ultimately the abandonment, right? Because if you get clingy out of a fear of abandonment, the person is going to start pulling away because like, come on, too clingy. And then we feel them pulling away and we get even more clingy. It becomes this vicious cycle. So a big fear of abandonment can really sabotage a relationship and also really interfere with even being with the right person. So how do you heal that? Well, it's actually the same story, right? How did that fear of abandonment get started? Well, it probably came from some kind of abandonment experiences growing up as a child, because nobody's born with a fear of abandonment. It develops from experiences. Sometimes the abandonment experiences are very obvious, right? And sometimes they're more subtle. So an obvious one is my parents get divorced and my father just completely disappears, right? No visitation, nothing. He's just gone. And, I was 6 when my parents got divorced. So that was a huge abandonment, right? So that's really obvious. Another kind of abandonment could be the parent goes on lots of business trips for lengthy periods of time. And even though they're loving when they're back, it's painful every time they leave, right? And it feels abandoning. So it's not like the parent is not intending to abandon us at all, right? This is just my job. I have to go. So the parent could be super loving when they're home, but just the fact that they have to leave on these business trips that, last for a few weeks at a time, if you're a really little kid, little kids don't understand this stuff. You say, well, I love you. I have to leave because of work. Little kids don't understand what that means. Leave for work. I don't know what that means. But all they know is that, daddy or mommy is gone for a long time. So it feels abandoning. A death of a beloved parent or a grandparent or aunt or uncle, something like that. Even though it's not their fault that they died, right? But still, it can be a painful abandonment. These are all the obvious ones, though. There could be more subtle ones. They're a little trickier. And this is so to heal, to address this fear of abandonment, you want to heal these kinds of experiences growing up. So again, you can use kind of regular EFT, and regular EFT of healing a memory is, just to put it simply, is you just relive the memory in your imagination, feel the painful feelings, and you tap on those feelings until they're gone. So in a nutshell, that's the way you heal a painful memory with regular EFT. And that can be sufficient. Sometimes though, it's not sufficient. There are more advanced versions of EFT called matrix reimprinting is one example. And then what I do is actually an advanced version of matrix reimprinting that I created myself. That is like 2 to 3 times more effective than regular EFT. But, if you're doing this on your own, whatever you can do is going to be helpful, right? Even if it doesn't totally take care of it, even if it just makes it better, that's really good. So again, first and worst. Those with abandonment experiences, well, it depends if it repeated or not. If your dad just disappeared after the divorce, there's just the one, right? But that's a big deal. So you want to really work on that one. So that's what you need to do. Let's see. This person wrote, healed painful memories with regular EFT. So I'm not quite sure if there's a question in this. Please write something more to follow up that so I understand what the question is. I gave that really simple description of how to heal a painful memory with EFT. But I have a video that goes into more detail. I just try to do it really quick here so I have time to answer more questions. But if you look for, I think it's called How to Heal a Painful Memory with EFT. Basic and advanced, I think, something like that. Anyway, just look on my channel. Just type in heal memory Stefan, or or just go to my channel and kind of search in within the channel, you'll see it. But that's if you're really wanting to change your life, EFT can be used in 2 ways. I call it EFT for okay, well actually I'm going to give preference to the new question that just came in. And if I have time, I'll come back to the coping versus healing. So A1B292 said, here, let me bring it up. Said, thank you for your answer. You're very welcome. I'm glad that it was helpful. What if we always lose interest in a partner after a few years? Well, that's a very interesting pattern. There's no easy answer for that because it depends on what's going on for you. One of the things that could be going on, there's so many different possibilities. So I'll just give you a couple so you can see that there's radically different reasons why that can happen. So the person had a fear of intimacy, for instance. So let's say she gets into a relationship. She has a fear of intimacy, so she keeps her partner at a distance. If you keep your partner at a distance, over time, the relationship will decline. Right? Relationships tend to either grow or they decline. They don't hold steady very much. They're either continuing to go up or they start to slide down. And they go up through continued intimacy, through continued, really vulnerable, intimate sharing, will tend to increase the level of connection and love in the relationship, and you'll experience the relationship is getting better. If you kind of a lot of people get into automatic pilot and just they think they're just coasting along. They sort of experience this coasting along, but what's really happening is they're declining. So if you have this fear of intimacy and you're declining, that will cause you to lose interest because the level of intimacy you're experiencing with your partner will decrease until eventually you're just not that interested anymore. So that's one thing that can cause that kind of thing. I'm not saying that's your reason, but I'd have to, hear more from you as to what's going on in your relationships that's leading you to lose interest over and over again. Now, in my case, I kept getting involved with women that I knew from day one I wasn't excited about. So to say I was losing interest after a period of time, I never was really that interested to begin with, right? Even though they're perfectly nice women, I just, I was avoiding or afraid to be with or go after a woman that I found super interesting and went for women that I didn't find that interesting. So it was kind of my own self-sabotage. So that'd be a different reason why, I would lose interest after some period of time. My case was I didn't have an interest. There's lots of different reasons why that can happen, though. So without more information, that's kind of the best I can do. But feel free to type in more stuff about, what happens for you in your relationships that you've noticed, and then maybe I can kind of diagnose it with you a bit. So I'd be happy to do that. Let's see. Anybody else on live have a question? All right. So let's go back to the emailed in questions. Let's see. All right. How can I find, attract, and connect to my soulmate with my present situation? I'm a senior, 76, a wounded healer, financially independent, a widow, developing my skills in marketing and public speaking as I have a book ready to be printed with the second one in the works. This is very time consuming. I would love to find a soulmate and not live together permanently. Not quite sure what that means. However, spend time in my second home on an island off the grid in tropical paradise, feminine energy, or in beautiful British Columbia in masculine energy several weeks or months a year. I'm a world traveler who loves nature, biking, and hiking. So you seem to be saying that, okay, so Leanne found my video. How to uncover childhood. No, actually, that's a different video. That's a good one. How to uncover childhood memories for EFT tapping, beginner to advanced. So what that video is actually is when you don't know where this comes from. So let's say, you have a fear of intimacy and you kind of get more specific about it and you think about your childhood and you cannot think of the root cause. Sometimes the root cause is very obvious and sometimes it's hard to figure out what the root cause is. So then I have this video that has these processes to help you uncover root cause memories of an adult issue. So that's what that video is. So that's a great one if you haven't, if you don't know what the root cause memories are. But then I have another video that's about healing these root cause memories once you've identified what they are. So that's yet another video. Okay, so the senior 76 years old wounded healer, financially independent, working on books and marketing and publishing and all that. Well, I'm not quite sure what the issue is. You're painting a really cool sounding picture that you have enough money to go have a second home, an island, or in a tropical paradise, or go to British Columbia, or whatever. That's awesome. That's great. So I don't really know what the issue is because you didn't include any details other than your general situation. So it's a little tricky. I mean, how you would attract a partner at your age is the same way we do it at any age. My mother met her soulmate at 71. She had been married to my stepfather until he died at 75, and she was 70. And she did a year of mourning. Now, that was a really good marriage. And she did a year of mourning. And then she, after a year, she ended up joining this thing called the Plato Society that was sort of self-run seminars just to have something interesting to do. And she met her third husband within a few weeks. She does not have blocks about meeting partners. Every one of them happened easily for her. But it's really a question of, so for this person, all I can do is answer generally since he didn't really tell me what any of the issues are. So identify if you have any negative attraction patterns. If you do, break out of those because otherwise you're kind of doomed to have bad experiences. And then, look into the 3 Secrets to Attracting Amazing Love mini course has an exercise to help you identify your fears and negative beliefs around being with your soulmate. So I would recommend doing that exercise to identify what your fears and negative beliefs are, and then clearing them out. And then the law of attraction thing, again, we're getting near the end of this call. I have a video on that. It's called The Right Way to Use the Law of Attraction to Attract Your Soulmate. And it talks about, so I talked about there being a wrong way and a right way. And the video is all about that. So rather than try and give you a quickie version right now, I'll just invite you to watch that. Leanne very helpfully identified the name of my other video. And I'll bring it up. It's called EFT to Heal a Painful Memory Using Tapping, Basic and Advanced. So that's my tutorial on how to use EFT to heal the memory using 2 different versions, and a very simple basic way to do it and a more advanced way to do it. All right. Any other questions from the live people? And doesn't seem to be, so I'm going to look for another email question. Okay, so let me just read this one. I am a woman from Hungary. I have followed your videos for several years. That's awesome. I was a single person for 10 years, and I wanted to learn about romantic relationships. 3 months ago, I found someone. We live together and are very happy. My age is 63. His is 61. You helped me a lot with keeping spirits up. I remember your story about your mother who found love above 80. It's actually above 70. Same story. Hey, that's cool. What a funny coincidence. My only problem is that I have no orgasm. Earlier, I did with partners and on my own as well. What do you recommend for me? So that's an interesting question. There's a lot of different answers for that. A lot of possible causes. Some may be biological. So, you were single for 10 years, then you met this person. So, well, except for you said on your own, you could. I was going to say 10 years later, menopause and things like that could have an effect there. So I'm going to look at cycle, but you can do it on your own. So that's great. That means everything's still working. That's good. So I'm going to give you psychological possibilities. Without more information, it's hard to give you a specific answer, but I can give you possibilities. So one possibility is that, remember the person with the fear of intimacy. And we all tend to have some fears of intimacy, right? So it's not, there's some people who recognize that, wow, I've got really strong fears of intimacy, but we all tend to have some, right? So the thing about, having sex and orgasm, particularly for women, is that it's about, there's a feeling. Now, this is not universal, and I'm a guy, so this is just the best understanding I have. That there's a degree of surrender and vulnerability that goes with that, right? For a guy, it's simpler. It's actually tension makes it easier to have an orgasm unless it's distracting you, right? But it's my understanding anyway that for women, it's more about relaxing, receiving, surrendering into it. And, if you tense up at all, that can interfere with being able to have an orgasm. So fears around intimacy could have that. Also, if the man if you're not feeling that the way he is having sex with you or making love to you is very honoring of who you are, you can feel kind of uncared about, right? In some way by how he's doing it. And that can take you, anything that kind of takes you out of truly being in the moment, relaxing, being open, being vulnerable, surrendering, all that will make it hard to have an orgasm. So I don't know what your situation is, specifically. So, if you were live on the call, we could have kind of dialogued with it a bit, but those are the possibilities. So, the first step is to see if you can identify what's interfering with you having an orgasm, right? Because until you figure that out, there's nothing you can do. But once you figure that out, depending on what it is, I could give you more specifics as, okay, how do you address that? All right, so that's that one. Anybody live have another question? Okay. Well, I just want to mention again. So we're coming to an end. I'd like to mention again, you can find me at singletosoulmate.me. It's on the screen here. It's the number 2, single2soulmate.me. There's my free mini course of 3 secrets to attracting amazing love. That's just 8 daily lessons. 7 of them are emails and 1 of them is a video. And they're written as in the form of stories. So it makes it more fun to read it. So people generally like it. I'm also available for one-on-one work, and there's a contact form on our website if you'd like to explore that possibility. I'm very happy to talk about it with you and potentially work together. And I also have my products, right? So there's the Single to Soulmate Breakthrough Program, which is a home healing program to help address all 3 of these major blocks, right? Being attracted to wrong people, fears, and limiting beliefs, being with your ideal partner, and using the law of attraction the right way. And then I also have this Self-Love to Soulmate program to help build up your self-love and self-esteem. And then I have this little small one called Fearless Dating that's about addressing your fear of rejection when going on dates, right? Because no matter how much healing we've done, lots of times we approach a date feeling a little scared of being rejected, right? And depending on how strong that fear is, that can really make it hard to be relaxed and comfortable. But if you can address that, it makes life much easier. And I have a little program that's just about that. And it's inexpensive. It's like $47. So anyway, we'll be doing these Ask Me Anything calls monthly. So, would love to have you on the next call. I would love to have more live questions because, it gives us the opportunity to go back and forth and discuss these things. As you can see with these mailed in questions, I get the information I get, and then I have to work with that. And actually, a really great way to do it is to email the question in advance and be on live, because that way I can just read your initial question. And if you're on live, if you hear your question being read, if I'm a little confused or I want more information or whatever, I can, you can provide me with that information, and we can directly dialogue on it, which is pretty cool. So we can really explore it. I can really diagnose what's going on and all that kind of stuff. So I really encourage you guys to do that. So in any case, I just want you to just hold this to your heart, which is that if these key blocks are addressed, love is totally possible for you, right? So many people have done it before you by just clearing out these 3 key blocks. So if you do it, you'll be able to find your soulmate too. Let's see. Leanne wrote, any set days, times? Actually, no. Oh, when are you planning going live again? So I'm thinking of doing it monthly, and it'll probably be on a weekend like this one. There's potentially more people available to participate live. I might try a weekday just to see if I get a better turnout. And it'll be each month, but it's not a set schedule, like, 3rd Saturday of every month, something like that. Because it really kind of depends on what's going on in my life too. So at some point I'll be thinking, I think it's time to do another Ask Me Anything call, and I'll look at my calendar and I'll schedule it, and then I'll do an announcement. So by the way, if you get the mini course, sign up for the mini course, you'll also get my announcements of when the next live Ask Me Anything call is. Otherwise, if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, you should get some kind of notification from that as well. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next live Ask Me Anything about attracting your soulmate using the power of EFT. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.